they would never invite someone who's not qualified down to a job interview, because even if they love that person, even if they're like the greatest person ever to deal with, it doesn't matter because they don't have the requirements. You know, you need to have this education and this skill. And if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how wonderful you are, you can't do the job, right? So there's no reason for them to invite someone down to an interview that is not qualified on paper. So the only people they invite down to job interviews are ones that look good on paper. Now, the question is, what do you like as a person? Okay, that's one big question. Another question is what you put in paper, is that valid? I mean, some people, their resume is a complete fabrication. It's a lie. You would want to try and verify some of that, right? So these are some of the reasons that we do job interviews. In theory, it's to check up on some of these things. So you go down to an interview, despite what they say, they could say things like, oh, you're overqualified or some stupid crap like that. It's like, well, that's clearly not the case, because if you honestly felt that I was overqualified based on my resume, why the hell did you bring me down here? What, to waste both our times? Like, it's stupid. Like, some of those things that they'll say to try and get a reaction out of you are blatantly false by the fact that you're here, right? So that's what it means to be brought down to an interview. If you get called down for a job interview after having sent in an application, and they say, well, you're clearly not qualified for this, and they say that at the beginning, right, before you've really had a chance to tell them anything, it's obviously a tactic because they don't believe that. Either that, or they can so stupid they could barely tie their shoes. I mean, you could get both. But you know what I'm saying? What would be the point of bringing somebody that's not qualified down to a job interview? Like, how is that a good use of your time? You know? That's what it means. Yeah, it means that you're technically competent. Now, assuming that everything you've put on the paper is correct, is accurate, what they want to say is like, well, it looks good, but we want to verify. So you say here that you have a degree in engineering, right? Okay, well, let's ask you a pretty basic engineering question, and, you know, you should be able to answer, right? If you can't answer a very basic engineering question, then something weird's going on. You know, you say you've got a degree in it, but yet you can't answer the most simple thing about, you know what I mean? They might want to do some of that. And sometimes we see that in job interviews where they want to test your knowledge. In certain industries, that happens, but not in other industries, right? Depends what we're talking about. In highly regulated industries, you usually don't get a lot of that. You know, like if you're a lawyer or something, people aren't going to make you take an aptitude test if you're like a fully qualified lawyer with courtroom experience. You know what I mean? Like if you've been called to the bar and you're a member of the same professional organization that these people are a member of, they're not going to give you skill testing questions and all this aptitude test. It's unnecessary, right? But if you're in an industry where there's all kinds of weird educational qualifications floating around that, you know, people are kind of suspicious of these, like, is this like a diploma mill type thing, or are these really that valuable? So they don't know, so they'll have more of the aptitude tests to see, like, okay, how much do you actually know? Right? But that varies by industry. Yeah, and they may challenge your skills. Sometimes they'll even do it in a rude way sometimes, because there's a lot of incompetent recruiters out there, or even hiring managers. In my experience, hiring managers in operations are the worst for that. You know, engineer types, technician types, they're the worst for that. They have the least social skills, like generally speaking, and they show it. They'll say some pretty blunt stuff. And I've been on the receiving side of that early in my career, where you go down and you're interviewed by like a chief operating officer or something, and says, like, you know, they're looking at your resume and they're going like, you know, well, you clearly don't understand this, and you clearly don't have this. And it's like, what? It's right there, you know? Or they're being what seems to be like really obtuse and saying, well, you know, I understand that you got this law degree thing, but, you know, show me you know how to use a dictionary. There's no mention of knowing how to use a dictionary under the skills section of your resume. So I don't think, you know, you'd really have the language skills to do this job. You know, they'll say this stupid crap to you, to your face, which is, which is insulting. It can be viewed as insulting. And they're doing it sometimes because they're idiots and sometimes because it's strategic. Just to see if testing for a couple of things. So I don't know if you've had the misfortune of being in a job interview where they've done that. Right? And by the way, the general rule, if you want to really look like a pro at this kind of stuff, is your answer, you start out like here's something to practice, by the way, for you guys. Your answer starts out by agreeing with them. Because they're expecting you to go, what? And then get all upset about it. Like, what are you talking about? I got this and this, if you want to be a master of communication, you start by agreeing. You say, absolutely, I can totally understand how that's not obvious at all. And you're right. You bring up a point. I mean, do they ever mention vocabulary where they talk about like legal qualifications? That's not something you hear very often, But listen, the thing is that when, I did my bar exam, the vocabulary requirements are actually very high. And this is something that, you can find out quite easily. You can verify this. Those were brought in by the last dean, as far as I know, of the law faculty, here in, our city or whatever. And, you can see that. And they actually have quite high requirements for the vocabulary. You really need to know your stuff. So that's what I do have, So even though that isn't really explicitly stated on there, you can be sure that I have that. Or something like this. I'm just making it up off the top of my head. But start out by agreeing. And then you look like a genius, You look like, you're the most easy person in the world to deal with, that even if they bring almost an accusation to you, they'll still, you won't be rude. You'll still have a pleasant conversation. You'll end up persuading them and winning them over. And they go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Right? So, that takes practice, by the way. I had to really practice that one. And I'm not perfect at it today by a long shot, but I have done that. And it goes over really well, generally speaking. I'm the type of person that gets upset, or you have to downplay that, right? That's why sometimes people will laugh, ha 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 ha, kind of thing, right? To kind of clear the air, or just kind of diffuse the tension a little bit, and then absolutely, I can totally see how that happens. That actually has been brought to my attention before, blah, 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 blah. And then you just go into it with a smile on your face, right? And they will conclude that you're like the most awesome, capable person if you can do that.